Hello gamers, this is Senile Sarge. Today's video is focused on answering the question, is Tiny Tina's Wonderlands worth your time, or more importantly, worth your money? To help you navigate around the video, I have placed timestamps down in the description so you can watch the parts that are most important to you. During our discussion today, I will have some gameplay in the background of my Berserker / Spore Warden as I progress through the actual game. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is developed by Gearbox Software, and it's really all about embarking on an epic adventure while yielding high-powered weaponry. You will fight your way through a chaotic fantasy world brought to life during a board game with Tiny Tina and friends. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is available on Xbox, PlayStation, and the Epic's Game Store for $59.99. That's US dollars for the base version, and then $79.99 US dollars for the most expensive version, which also has the first season pass. Unfortunately, the game is not available on Steam as of the time of recording this video, which is March of 2022. All right, so let's talk about what the game includes. It has kind of a looter shooter mechanics. There's a Dungeons and Dragons here in the game where you're moving characters around and doing things. It's got single player, it's got co-op gameplay. The co-op gameplay is available for up to 4 friends. Wonderlands is cross-platform, meaning Xbox, PlayStation, and PC players can all band together to play. Players get a plethora of guns, spells, swords, and so much more to choose from. You can personalize your hero through cosmetics. You get those in-game and then also through developer giveaways. There's a total of 6 classes to choose from, and as you progress, you will get the opportunity to not only use one class, but you'll get an opportunity to use a multi-class system, which is unique to Wonderlands. At its core, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is a looter shooter, but built on the same platform as the past Borderlands series. The real change in Wonderlands is how the game is presented to the players. Understanding this is not Borderlands, this is a new game with kind of an idea. The game is played out, managed like a Dungeons and Dragons similar style board game where you compete against some friends. There's a lot of really well done jokes in the game. I feel like the whole idea of playing the game is fun, and I love that there's 2 different areas, right? The area where you have the Dungeons and Dragons feel, and then the area where you're actually playing the game. Now that you know more about the game, let's talk about a few different key aspects of the game. So from the art style, like the past franchises, I absolutely love the art style of Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Much like the other games inside of the franchise, Wonderlands looks amazing. And really, to admire it, you've got to kind of stop what you're doing and just like look around. Turn the graphics up, stop, and just admire the game. I mean, the game looks really good. The combat looks good. Even the addition of spells and magics. I'm positive that the artist and developer were flexing a little bit because all of it looks as good as you would expect it to, and it keeps that kind of unique feel that we're all used to. Controls, just to make one point here on this before I discuss it too much, there's nothing here that I'm going to talk about that really breaks gameplay or even the combat in the game. Most of the control issues that I've seen in the game are really UI based issues. My initial dive into Borderlands series, many years ago, was using a controller. So that's kind of what I knew. Coming into Wonderlands, this will be the first version I played from start on keyboard and mouse. There are multiple things in the game that make me feel as though the game was actually developed for a controller. I can't guarantee that that's what it is. That's just me assuming that this is probably what happened. Some of the spots that you're going to see inside the game where you'll actually click, put your mouse over, hover over top of it, you'll left click, and nothing actually registered. You got to move a little bit more to the right or a little bit to the left. Map movement and alignment is just awkward. I know it worked well on the controller, and it does, because that's just kind of what you're used to in games like that. But for a PC, you would expect to be able to put your mouse over the top of something and left click it and to be able to fast travel, as an example. Instead, you've got to center it on the map. And then finally, the keyboard mapping for the buttons was just difficult to use out of the box. Had stuff all over the place. Worked well with the controller. The good news here, though, is you got key binding. So although it's a little bit weird, I mean, key binding will kind of go in. Important note here, as I talked about, controller feels really good with the game, but I decided to stick with mouse and keyboard, having just a little bit of key mapping and everything else. I think I've got it kind of where it needs to be. Now let's talk a little bit about bugs. The most disappointing thing about my time in Wonderlands has really been server connection issues. After all, I enjoy playing games with friends more than I do alone most of the time. We also found some general bugs, but nothing that was game breaking. Listen, I expect games to have bugs. It's just kind of the norm at this point. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm not saying that I'm okay with it. I'm just saying that I expect it. Now, Now, part of that is because the size of the games and the complexity of what the developers are trying to do. I do feel like they probably could have done 1 or 2 more passes of quality assurance on this game, and we would be way better than where we currently are. But with that, the one that's most upsetting is obviously the server side issues, not being able to connect with friends. That has probably been one of the most aggravating things, and it's one that really Gearbox needs to spend some time to make sure that it's fixed. Now, with that, let me give you some other examples of things. Item images disappearing from my inventory when in game. I don't know why it happens. Sometimes it just go away. I mean, all the other data is there. You just don't see any of the images. Joining session with player prompt that stays on your screen. So if I go into, let's say, a dungeon or somewhere with them, and up in the top left, it'll start counting down that somebody's pushed the button. Sometimes that'll stick and it'll just stay there. The other thing is not being able to sell inventory items at the vending machine by pressing Q. Instead, you've got to go into the actual vending machine. You press X, it sells it, and that's fine. But for somebody who doesn't know that the first time, like I did, I pressed the left mouse button and I actually bought a weapon. So that can be aggravating. And then the final thing is just the servers. The servers by far are probably the most aggravating. What I will tell you about the servers though, is that even if the servers go offline, you can still play the game in single player mode. You just can't play in multiplayer. So it doesn't affect, again, the gameplay from a single player perspective, but it will if you're trying to play with friends. I also went and looked at reviews from others just to kind of get a feel for the game. Reviews are really mixed across the internet on Wonderlands. I was actually pretty surprised. It seemed that players that love D&D and Borderlands enjoy Wonderland. I did find that from a Borderlands perspective, not everybody was happy with it, because I think some people wanted this to be another Borderlands. I actually overall enjoyed it. And I would also say overall, it seems pretty unanimous that everyone is loving the actual gameplay. I mean, the actual look and feel of it. I think most of the complaints are around the UI, servers, and really where the game is offered, which is on Epic Game Store and not on Steam, which I know has impacted some folks. One of the things I always like to look at is the long-term playability. I really couldn't find a clearly drawn out roadmap for Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. They do have some details on the game available on the website, and some multiple season passes and all this type of thing, but there's nothing that's drawn out that physically shows it that I could find. We know that the season pass will add some additional content, which includes a seventh class. We got an expansion of the multi-class system coming, new cosmetic, new bosses, new areas. We believe, from what I could find, that looks like April 21st is around the date that the Mirror of Mystery is going to drop. But again, I haven't seen an official date announced. And if you guys know of something, please post it down below in the actual comments. There's also a lot of opportunity here for Gearbox to continue to make this game grow. I think there's really a gap right now in a game like this. I think Borderlands is just really in a unique environment with the type of games that has been developed, and now they've kind of have this offshoot of Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, and it still feels okay, right? I mean, they're still using the same UI. There's still some issues on that portion, but the game is super fun. So I think if they can really put out some good content here that keeps folks engaged over the next, we'll say year or two, they're going to be in a really, really good place with the game. They need to add more bosses. They need to look at the dungeons, like all of these things, because that end game is where I'm most concerned. And I'm seeing people hit the end game already, and we've only had the game in our hands for a couple days now. So we're going to know here probably in the next week or two if the if the long-term playability of this game is going to be good. All right, let's talk about the overall verdict. And this is really why most of you are here. Look, at its core, Tiny Tina's Wonderland is a fun game. It is beautiful, and it is a lot of fun to play with friends when you're not having issues with the servers. Since its release, I've spent more time researching and playing this game than I have any other game in the last year. I mean, I find it interesting looking for builds and how to mismatch or match different classes together, all of that. I love the D&D themed inclusion that was brought into this game and how it's laid out and how they complement each other. The combat is glorious, the story is funny, and it's a perfect game to play with friends. And I know some people say that the story it's a little too much. I don't think so. I enjoy humor. I enjoyed this, so I think it's good. There's two major areas right now that you as players need to be concerned with. Number one, if you don't have Epic Games Store, you're a Steam player, you're not going to get the game because it's not going to be coming until really 2022. So at some point, we don't know when, but some point this year, I would suspect later in the year, the game will release for you. So unfortunately, you won't be. So that's one major issue. The second one is the servers. The servers continue to be an issue. I played today, had issues a little bit as well. So there hasn't been a day yet at this point that I haven't had an issue with the game. My hope is over time it self-corrects and things are better. So let's answer the question for you. Should you buy the game? I would say the following. If you're planning to play alone because you love Borderlands series, maybe you're a D&D fan, you you like what you've seen thus far, then purchase it. None of the issues I've mentioned will really cause you any issues through the actual game. Game's fun, it's enjoyable, you're gonna have a great time. If you don't mind playing alone when the server issues arise, but you plan on playing with friends, then you should be fine to pick up the game. All right, so if the server issues, I mean, listen, I get to play with friends every day. There's just usually an hour or so that I always have issues, and maybe it's just me, I don't know. Maybe everybody can reply here and say they have no server issues, but I know I keep having them. I don't really I don't get emotional myself about the server issues, but it does kind of stink that I can't play with my friends for a bit. The good news though is you're gonna be able to play alone, so it's not a big deal. The final thing I would tell you is if you are planning on playing with friends and you don't want to deal with server issues, I would wait to purchase the game. I think you need to wait until server instability issues are fixed, which I don't believe is going to happen until probably mid-April. I mean, I still think they got a little bit of time. Hopefully they do it before then, but there's still some issues here that they need to work on to figure out exactly what it is. For those that don't have Epic Game Store, your Steam, obviously we're not going to see you until later this year. All right, well, hopefully you enjoyed this review. If you did, do me a favor, slap that like button. The other thing I would say is if you're looking for more Tiny Tina's Wonderlands video, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you get notified when the videos are live. Thanks for watching the video, everybody, and we'll see you on the next one. See you now, Sarge, signing off.